It's a pleasure to see you all again. The topic is, academic research and the language of academia. And it usually, the vocabulary is part of it, the conceptual part of it is field specific. So if you're a linguist, probably you have different vocabularies that you mobilize. And if you are a literature person, probably you use different kind of language. But there is a misconception in, especially when people are studying and they are trying to be scholarly. There's this idea that somehow the way we speak or the way we write has to be, slightly esoteric and convoluted, and we have to write in complicated sentences, which is something that I encourage people to avoid, right? Because what decides for you the tone and the language and the vocabularies that you mobilize, what decides what it's going to be is what you want from your work, right? Do you want to publish, well-informed, well-researched, scholarly work that actually goes and does something in the world or enables people to think differently, to live differently, then chances are your mode of writing is going to be less dense, not simple, but it will use vocabularies that are accessible. And if it uses vocabularies that are not accessible, that are hard, that you will explain it in the process of your discussion. That's the way I have traditionally functioned in my scholarship, whatever it's worth. Now, coming to the main part, and that is the academic writing part of it. What is it? I always talk about, when people ask me about academic writing, I ask them, what you privilege, what you consider academic writing is going to define for you what kind of scholarship you produce. So let's say one level of it is, which is the lowest level of scholarship, reasons for it is that you need it to retain your job or to get your promotion. I need 6 publications, I need 12 articles, I need this. That is the most pragmatic, but also the least inspiring part of producing scholarship. Because all you are interested in is not your scholarly work, but rather in those numbers that you can take to HEC or whatever and say, okay, I qualify for an associate professor position and I qualify for this or that. Pragmatically speaking, we all live in this world and we have to do these things. I have nothing against it if that's what motivates you. But if that is what you take from what constitutes scholarship or the reason for it, your approach to scholarship will be different. Your approach to academic writing will be different. Since you have convinced yourself that you need to produce these numbers, you will not be much interested in producing a body of work which is connected to your previous work, where you're building on what you previously did and moving on. You will end up producing, sort of opportunistic work. And you can see that. I mean, pick up the CV of some of your major professors, other than a few good ones. Like there are people who have published 100 papers and 150 papers. And it's impressive, but then every time you look at it, it's, there are 2 authors or 3 authors. Most of the times those authors are their graduate students. So these are the people they mentored and advised, and when those people went and started submitting their articles, the professors just attached their own name to it. Now that gives them the numbers, but it doesn't give them an oeuvre, right? It doesn't give them a body of work that they can offer to the world and say, here is how my thought has emerged. So that is one reason to publish, is to excel at your, and we all have pressures. In the United States, people have to produce, people have to publish if you are at a research university. Another way of reason for publications, of course, is that you want to make an impact in your field, whatever you're studying, linguistics or literary studies, 18th century literature, 20th century literature. If your approach is to have an impact or a say in your field, then your priorities will be different, right? Your priorities then are to get to know where the conversation is in your field, right? You read, you take notes, you are aware of what's being published in your field. And then when you decide to write something, it is current and it's doing something innovative and new. But the third and the most important for me is that you're publishing, okay, for your promotion to have an impact in your field. But you also want to have some impact in the world. You want your work to be relevant to how people live their lives and how they live in this world, help them think critically of this world. That to me is probably the best way of looking at your scholarly work, your academic work. And it will enable you then to produce work that is current, that deals with the issues of the world through literary texts or through linguistic studies, and then offers something to the world which is more than just the technical vocabularies that you employ. Now, coming to the language, what I always encourage people to do is that you can use the most complex vocabularies, but you must unpack them in your writing. You will see that I will say, okay, in this book, I'll be using these three concepts. I'll be using framing. I'll be using, ideology. And here is my understanding of ideology. Now, there are two reasons for that. One, as a scholar, you're precisely pointing out to your readers that when you use the term ideology or framing, this is what you mean. This is your understanding of it. So nowhere in your writing should they be asking this question. I mean, he keeps mentioning ideology. I don't even know how does he understand this concept. So you have done that in the body, within the body of your work, you have broken down your own concepts and briefly touched upon what do they mean to you. And then you use them to read a text or write about a situation or a text. The second advantage in that is when you do that, then when your articles go for review, the reviewers are not going to ask you, what do you mean when you say this? Or your reading of ideology, you're misconstruing what ideology means, and you basically say, no, I mean, I explained it. This is the understanding of ideology that I'm employing. So pragmatically speaking, you are already forestalling any criticism on terminology that might come from your reviewers of articles. And so it serves two purposes. It educates your reader and precisely tells them what is it that you're doing and why. And then it forestalls against any kind of criticism that might challenge your understanding of a concept. But most importantly, I mean, what decides how you write, what kind of vocabularies you use, is going to be what you want your work to do in the world. If you just want an essay that 6 people read and 4 of them understand, you can write like that. You can use the vocabularies like that, because the idea is to impress people with your erudition and with your knowledge of technical vocabularies. But if you want to have an impact in the world, if you want your work to do something in the world where people take it and maybe build a praxis around it, or use it in their classrooms, then your work has to be accessible. It doesn't have to be about displaying your mastery of the vocabularies of your field, but displaying your understanding of those vocabularies, right? And then writing something that is easily understood which is not simplified, but accessible. So that's the distinction that I would make. There's always a process. So before you submit your work to any journal, get an issue or two of and see what kind of work do they publish. That would give you an idea of, okay, I'm going to pitch this article to South Asia, and these are the kind of articles they publish. Sometimes there'll be journals that would say we don't do theory. Some journals would basically say we do empirical studies. So you have to find out which journal is the kind of journal where your work would fit in. Then check what is their house style. I mean, do they use MLA? Do they use Chicago? Do they use APA? So you want to then format your article according to their house style. Now, these things you should be doing before you send in. Then you have to look at, do they accept direct submissions, or do you have to email the editors and see if they're accepting submissions? That should be on their website. If they accept direct submissions, find out who to send it to. Is there an email for submissions? If there is an email, what do they want in the subject line, right? And then, write a polite email. If they want you to query first, you just write a polite email. Find out who the editor is. So it's always better to say, dear Dr. So, or dear, than, hey, hello, dear madam and sir. And then just explain, I am so-and-so, this is what I've written about. Would it be okay for me to send you the article? Or would you like to review the abstract of my article? This is if the journal wants a query email first and then asks you to send. If they just say, here, submit to us, here is our link, then just use that link and submit your article. Now, with publications, I've seen people, they're like, I need to finish my PhD, but I need to publish my articles. Give yourself time. A good journal can sometimes take 2 years to publish an article. Okay. No one is going to turn around and say, okay, your article is accepted, it's going to come out next week. If they do that, they are probably not worth your time. So give yourself time and then follow the process. Your article, chances are, sometimes the journals first do an in-house review and then decide if they are going to send it to the reviewers. Sometimes they just take your article and send it to the reviewers. Now, each article is at least reviewed by 2 reviewers in a peer-reviewed journal. Now, these are usually absolutely double-blind reviews. That means you don't know who's reviewing you, and the reviewers don't know whose work it is. It would take sometimes from 3 to 5 months for the reviews to come back. Minimum at least 2 months. So when the reviews come back to you, you will, let's say the reviewers like your article, but they want you to revise it. If a journal editor writes you and says revise and resubmit, it is not a rejection. It is actually, chances are, it is going to be an acceptance. So look at the reviews, read the reviews, incorporate the changes in your article, and then before you send it back, write a note to the editor where you say, here is how I have responded to the reviewer's comments. Reviewer 1. And then you go, okay, there, mentioned this, this, and this. I have now revised this part like this, revised this. So 1 or 2 page report, write a report of how you have revised the article in light of the reviews, right? And then you send it back to the journal. Now the journal will take it, they will this time probably discuss internally and give you a decision. Now, after they have given you a decision to accept your article, there is a whole process, right? You are going to give them the final article. they are going to send it to a copy editor. The copy editor's job is to read through your entire article and give you their suggestions of what needs to be changed, what needs to be edited, what needs to be corrected on the level of language, not your claims or not. They are not specialists in your field. They just look at the language. And when the document comes back to you from the copy editors, it will have track changes. Don't just go and accept all, just take at all the changes, look at all the changes that they have made and accept the ones that you think are right and correct. And if there is something, a change that they have made which you disagree with, you don't accept that change, right? And then you send the clean copy back with your comments by saying, these are the changes I've not accepted because they don't make sense. After copy editing, your article will then go to the layout editor. Layout editors will produce the final galleys, the final proofs of your article. A good journal will send you the proofs, email you the proofs and say, here, take a final look. And that is where you do the proofreading. Now, proofreading is nothing more than looking at any typing errors or any small minor errors, because the galley is set. No editor is going to break a galley and then remake it. Okay? That is too much effort on their part. So this is not the stage where you say, could you move this sentence from here to here? Could you add 2 more sentences? No journal is going to do that. Any respectable journal will tell you, no, the final proofs are set. You just point out to us what minor errors are there. Sometimes some journals, to make sure that you actually proof the article, will put in something in an article. They'll put like a few numbers somewhere or a word that makes no sense. And so they would expect you to catch it in proofreading, right? So be watchful of that. So after you've proofread the final galleys, they'll go back to the journal, and then the journal will tell you your article will now be published in this issue of our journal. This is roughly the editorial process. There can be differences here and there, but all good journals worthy of their name will never publish your article without first copy editing it and giving you a chance to review it, and without giving you a chance to do the final proofs. Now, if you are running a journal in your own university or college, ask yourself if you're following that process. The worst thing that you can do to an author is take their article and then 3 months later you published it. They've had no say in copy editing. They've had no chance of proofreading. That would end up being a terrible thing for the author. I published an article with Ravi, and I never heard back from them. I sent them the article. I never heard back. No copy editing, no proofing. So eventually when the article came out, I was using Hans Robert Jass's term horizontal difference, right? And they had printed it as horizontal difference, right? Had they given me a chance to proofread it, to copy edit it, there is no way that term, which is so important from Joss's work, but was so important to my argument, could have been. So as a result, I could not even share that article with anyone, right? It was a waste of my time and effort. And eventually I took that article, cleaned it up, and published it in Pakistani so that more people have access to it. So keep that in mind, the process that you have to follow. You have to give yourself time for that, and be patient with the editors or with the reviewers, right? There are no shortcuts. Another thing that I would like you to keep in mind: never pay for your publication. In humanities, there is no model of pay to publish. no worthwhile humanities journal will ever ask you to pay a reviewer's fee or pay an editing fee. In sciences, yes, the scientific journals basically tell you we charge $4,000 to publish an article, but they already know it because the scientists here, they write their grants, and when they write their grants, they write a subvention fee in their grant. So it's kind of expected in hard sciences. In humanities, if someone is asking you to pay for reviews or pay to publish your article, don't do it. It's probably a predatory journal. Another thing to keep in mind is, and as I said, it will be decided by what your priorities are. If you just want those 6 articles, maybe, you'll do it. But if you want to be a living, breathing scholar with an impact in the world, I don't recommend doing it. Then it's also important to figure out whether it's a genuine journal or just a fake journal. The fake journals, you will see there are always spelling and linguistic errors in their description. They have like fictitious editorial boards. The world's headquarters for fake journals is Pakistan. Okay, there are 2 or 3 places in Wazirabad who have registered like hundreds upon hundreds of open access journals, and these are journals that call themselves American Journal of Linguistics and American Journal of this. So figure out whether or not it is actually a valid journal or not, and you have guidelines from HSC for that.